Perfect. All right. So this is an application you guys helped design. It is a phone app and the web map that you can use online and out in the backcountry on your phones, Android, iPhone. You already covered the intro to One Smart Park stuff, and we posted that video online as well. This is how to take it to the next level, where you want to start to use some custom symbology to re-represent things. Our statewide layers that we've created through One Smart Park come in pre-symbolized, so they look like just a standard way of viewing things, but there's more information in there that you could be using. You might want to bring in some extra layers from the outside world, add some labels, be able to print off a map, and we're going to show you how to do all of that today. Please put any questions you have throughout, whether it's a question on what we're showing you right now or something that you've been struggling with and you want to learn how to do, and we'll make sure that we cover that today as well. You're probably familiar with a bunch of the layers we've talked about. Some new things are the different utilities that you can collect. We'll show you that. We'll show you some resource management stuff coming out of Middle Fork Bottoms. That looks really cool. The access routes, your RMS data of law enforcement incidents, iNaturalist, all some really cool layers. If you've got an idea, we can make it happen and put it into this system. So there are two different locations for where we do mapping. When we're talking about doing it from your desk in the office. You are probably familiar with the whole One Smart Park web map, and then we have the custom map as well. So the way to get to the One Smart Park as we know it is to go to our hub site, and Leah will put the links in the chat for both of these, and you sign in at the top, and you can view the One Smart Park map. You guys all know this pretty well by now, and it's going to show you just a standard view of the data that's been collected at your park by your staff so far and around the state. If you're going to go full custom, it's time to move away to a different platform. So you're going to access this at tdec.maps.arcgis.com. You might not have been to this page since getting a license. You might have seen it in the introductory video on how to get a license, but it's the same thing. You're going to sign in up here, and this is where you kind of go to the next level of customization. So you're going to sign in with your account. If you need an account, or your staff, your maintenance workers, your admin, or an SIR is going to be doing some mapping, reach out to me. If you need a password reset, you can also reach out to me as well, and we'll get you started. So this is what we call the TDEC page, and this is what we call the hub page, in case you hear us referring to that. So the first thing you're going to want to do if you're going to make your first custom web map for a project is to copy One Smart Park. The way I do that is I go to my content, and I'm going to switch over to a different account that is more of a simplistic view that doesn't have a bunch of content already pre-made in it. By doing this, it's going to look a lot like what you guys have. So if I go to my content now, you'll notice I don't have anything that's been created before. You probably shouldn't. You might see like an old Excel report or something in here. But what there is all the content that you have access to through my organization. And so what I'm going to do is search for One Smart Park. And you'll see a bunch of things that show up. There's layers, story maps, and services. So I'm going to switch this to go to the status as authoritative, and that should help us narrow it down. Actually, we're not going to do that. I scratched that from the video. We're going to go to maps, and you'll see the One Smart Park map authoritative. You'll notice that from our training yesterday, we already have people copying the map, which is what we're going to show you how to do, and putting it into their own name. So when I go to the One Smart Park map, I have the option to copy everything that's already in here to my own map. So I don't have to go searching for every single layer one at a time. What I do is open it in the map viewer, and this is where you create your map. And it takes a little while to load the first time and to save. So before you do anything, you could zoom in a little bit if you want towards where your park is, but you're going to come over here to the left side. So these are all the tools on the left side on the black bar, and these are all the layer settings on the right side. I come down here to save, and I do save as. If you don't see this button, don't do any work. Reach out to me, and we'll need to upgrade your account to the next level, which has the publishing permissions, and that's what you're doing here. So we're going to hit Save As, and I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it One Smart Park Webmap Parks Demo 2. What you probably should do is name it the name of your park, or if you have a specific project that you're working on, you would name it that as well. As I said, it's going to take a while to save, and what it's doing is it's copying over all 40 something layers here into your own map so that you can use them and do what you want with them. We'll wait a second as we do that. Does anybody have any questions so far? All right, it worked. You'll see that green bar slide across. That lets you know that you're good to go. You might start working on here right away, but what I like to do is just double check that that worked. So I'm going to go over here to my content. And when I do that, there'll now be an item that I've created in my content. That's awesome. Look at that. We have our own web map. You'll notice over here that the sharing is set to just one person. So if you want to work with the rest of your staff on this web map, there's a couple of you guys that have licenses, you can set up a group that's dedicated to your park. So I know like Bicentennial Mall and Burgess Falls and Savage Gulf, those parks have already set up kind of a group in which they share their content to. So if you go to the groups pane, it'll show you all the groups that you belong to. We can also look at my organizations groups, in which case I see the Bicentennial Mall group, and that's just full of their staff. Natural Areas has one. Indian Mountain has a group dedicated to themselves, and it's just where you can share things that nobody else can see, really. So maybe you've got a reason to do that. And to make that group, you would create a group here, name it your park name or the project name of the people that are involved. Usually fine to just do it one per park and set up the settings, and then you would invite people into that group. So for this, right now, I told you that it was only shared to myself. I want to go into the sharing settings. I want to share this web map to the group of people that I want. I could share it to all of TDEC by doing this, and we never want to do share to public because we have some locked down information. And most likely wouldn't even let you do that because the layers are locked. But just in case, don't go any further than the organization. And down here under edit group sharing, it'll show you the options of all the different groups that you belong to. So the name of your state park one would be here if you were trying to share it to that group. All right, that should be pretty good. Leah, shall I jump into the reordering and visibility ranges?
Sounds good.
Okay. So your park map that comes in might have more than you really want to deal with on it. If you want it to just be focused on a couple layers, you can one by one remove those. So maybe I don't want to deal with miscellaneous or accessible assets. I could remove those from the map to try to clean it up. The top 20 or so, I'm going to zoom on into mouse tail landing so that they load up. They are the One Smart Park ones. And then when you get down past like fire management and resource management, these are some old historical data sets that we have from previous collections. And even lower are things like adjacent parcels, natural areas, state forests, TWA, TVA, distressed counties, and some reference things like imagery and contours, hill shade, hydrography, awesome great layers to have. So when you go on up to this, you can turn the visibility of things on and off. You can also reorder. So if I want to move stuff up and down, I can do that. Let's go on over to a park so you can see what that looks like. So in this case, park assets are in black and it's kind of busy. So what I can do is see this little eye here? That is called visibility. I can turn it on or off. Or I could completely remove it from the map if I wanted. If I wanted the orange squares to be on top, I would go down to wildlife area, which is those squares, and I could move it on top of the other layers so that they show up on top as well. There's one thing showing up at the very bottom here, and that is a time slider. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but we have historic topographic maps at the very bottom. That might be a layer you want to get rid of completely, or you might find helpful. If I turn it on, it's going to show me topo maps from different time periods. If I press the slider, it's going to go through time. And each time it stops, it's showing you a different time interval where there might have been a topo map available for that time period. I could pause it there and kind of be done with it. If I don't want this time slider anymore on my map, I'm going to click this layer to activate it. So you know a layer is activated when there's a blue line on the side. I'm going to go to properties over here. You get to the properties on the top corner, scroll to the bottom, and I'm going to turn enable time off. When I do that, it gets rid of that bar that was underneath. What's really cool is I can see the original river that was flowing through Percy Priest Lake here. So if you really want to know the best place to fish, great map for you to have. I'm actually going to remove this layer from the map so I don't have to worry about that as well. The last thing I'm going to do before I switch it over to Leah is talk about visibility scales. And so I have, let's go to trail damages. That layer is turned off by default, as are iNaturalist observations. If I turn it on, you'll see all the little trail damages points show up. If I click on it, you'll notice that as I zoom out, the stuff disappears. If I wanted them to show up here, I would change the visibility range. So again, I've activated the layer over here. I'm in the properties. And if I scroll down, I get this cool thing called visibility range. The arrow indicates where we are on it. And if I slide it to further, I can see those from further out. So if you were doing a project where you needed to print a map that was like a really large scale or something like this, you could set the visibility range so that it showed up further. If you only wanted that stuff to show up when you got really close, but figure out how close it is that you want it to show up, and that'll be the arrow. And you might set it like this so that they only show up if I get really close to the map within range. So that's what visibility scales are all about. All right, I'll turn it over to Leah, and she can show you the next stuff.
All right, so I have already made my custom web map by copying one smart park, just like Andrew showed. And so I'm going to demo some of these tools on your right, the white toolbar, kind of to make your maps look pretty and just to view data differently. So I'm going to zoom on into Fall Creek Falls. You see we have a lot of data going on, but the one that I want to see is actually turned off. It's event planning. If you don't know about event planning, this layer is used to map out things for events. The things like where rangers are stationed, where temporary parking lots are, routes, that kind of thing. So if you're ever interested in planning out an event, you can use that layer. But I'm going to show you how to filter layers to only show features that you're interested in seeing. It'll help you simplify your map when it's a little bit cluttered like it is now. So first I'm going to turn off park assets, cultural resources, signage, landscape features. I think that's pretty good, but I'll also turn off miscellaneous, those yellow points. Okay. So as you can see, Fall Creek Falls does a really good job with their event planning. They have a lot of data in here, but I'm going to click the filter button after I click event planning. So like Andrew said, that blue line needs to be on there. And then over here, I'm going to click filter. I'm going to add a new filter where my park name is Fall Creek Falls. I'm going to add another condition. And so at the top, it's going to automatically default to all of the following are true. So that's an and statement. But if you wanted an or statement, you would just change it to any of the following are true. So for this, we want to make sure we're only looking at data from the event called the Wounded Warrior Hunt. And you can see it grayed out all of this data from other events. But if I zoom out, my Wounded Warrior Hunt icons are still there. I even want to go further to only show me feature types of hunting blinds. Okay, so now I only am seeing hunting blinds for the Wounded Warrior hunt at Fall Creek Falls. So I'm going to click save. So this is a really cool way to show very specific data. Like you can really get detailed with your filters if you're only wanting to see certain features. But it's also a great way to overlap different data sets and kind of do some simple spatial analysis. So if you see all of these orange wildlife points, if I click on one of those, these are just evidence of deer activity in the area, like rubs and scrapes. So this kind of helps them plan out where they want to put their wounded warrior hunting blinds so that those hunters can be successful. So it's just a cool way to view data differently. The next thing I'm going to demo is base map. So our base map as a default is this one with the contour lines. It's pretty simple, but if you go over to your black toolbar, you're going to click base map. You'll see that you have access to all of these different kinds. So maybe these hunters want to see imagery. I like this firefly imagery. So that's a little more helpful just to see the landscape of the area. You can also get pretty artsy if you want, like this modern antique style. Fall Creek Falls also had like a spooktacular event over Halloween. And for that one, I used this dark version just to get a little more spooky. But those are good ways to change the look of your map very easily with these base maps that are already built for you. So I'm going to go back to Firefly imagery, and we're going to zoom on over to Middle Fork Bottoms now. All right, so we're at Middle Fork Bottoms. I'm going to go to my layers, and I'm going to turn off some things real quick, like if you're ever getting lost in our long list of layers, they're organized by points, lines, polygons, and then reference layers. So that kind of helps you, but again, you're just going to have to read a lot. So I'm going to turn off this resource management planning, and I'm also going to turn off trail planning. All right, sweet. So now I'm just looking at the park boundary, which I can barely see. But if you look at this imagery, so this is pretty accurate to what's on the ground today. But if I were to turn on some of these imagery layers at the bottom, like this clarity one, you'll see that it's not very accurate. It's older imagery. If I go to this T-dot one, it's even older. So just make sure it's relevant to the time period you're researching or doing your project in, and you might have to try different layers until you're satisfied with the data you're seeing. Okay, so for this one, we're going to change the boundary to be a little more visible. So I'm going to scroll to the Tennessee State Park boundaries. Over here on the right, I'm going to click properties, and I'm going to do edit layer style. So right now, it's really light green, and because it has imagery underneath it, it's actually being blended with the imagery. That's called a blend mode. And if I go to properties, you'll see that here it's called multiply. Sometimes that changes the way you're expecting data to look like. So I'm just going to change it to normal, and now you'll see it's a transparent layer on top of imagery now. If I go to styles, I'm going to make this just a white outline instead of a green polygon. So I'll go to style options. You'll see right now it's called single symbol. That just means every feature in this layer has the same symbology. I'll click the pencil, and we're going to change the solid stroke, so that's the outline, to white. And I'm going to crank it up so it's pretty thick. And you can see this happening in the map right now. And then for the solid fill, I'm actually going to say no color because I want to see the imagery. So I'm happy with that, and I'll click done. All right, next we're going to work on the trails. So right now they're like a dotted gray line and they're hard to see, but we want to make them pop a little more. So I'm going to go to Tennessee State Park trails. Right now, you'll see they're being symbolized based on a field called blaze color. And here's your legend. So we're going to actually remove that field and we're going to do a single symbol just because at Middle Fork Bottoms, they're all the same paved path. So there's no need to symbolize them differently. I'm going to make the line a dark brown and make it much thicker. I think we need to go even darker. There we go. Okay. So now I have my paths and my boundary ready. The next thing I want to look at is one of our new layers called this resource management planning. If I turn this on, you're going to see Middle Fork Bottoms has planned out almost their entire park with different land cover types. So if I click on this one, it's bottomland hardwoods. If I click on this one, it's the fishing lake. So right now, I can't really tell that they're different based on the same symbology. So we want to symbolize them differently. So I'm going to select resource management planning, and we're going to add a field, and it's going to be called the name. So basically I'm telling it I want a different color for every name. And you can see that it's already done that for me in this legend here, but I want to tweak that a little. So I'll click style options. And as a default, it'll only add in 10 options. So if you're wanting to add in all of your land cover types, you would just select all these values and move them to the group up here. For this demo, I'm just going to keep it pretty simple. So if I wanted to, I could click on these individual land cover types and color them a specific color that matches that land cover type. And then you can even change like the color ramp up here if you want to use like a preset color ramp. Right now, this is great, but I'd really like to see the imagery underneath it. So if I go back to the properties pane, and scroll down to transparency. If I make this layer like 60% transparent, now I can still see my land cover types, but I can also see the imagery and the terrain below it, which is pretty helpful. Let's go back to the styles real quick. If I were to click on this polygon right here, this bottomland hardwoods, some of these are called oak savanna, and I only want to see those. So let me first add a filter where I want to only show where the name is oak savanna. And I'm going to click save. And now I'm only seeing certain polygons show up. If I click on this polygon, it's going to say that it has a prescription of a prescribed fire and that needs to occur between January 30th and April 29th. So if I wanted to view these polygons of oak savanna based on when I need to burn them, let's do that now. So I'll go to styles and we'll remove name. And this time we're going to add a field, and it's going to be that date range start. So that was that January 30th for the one I clicked on. I'm going to click add. And now I can do this continuous timeline color. So this is just saying, let me pick a better ramp for fire. So if I click in this, we can even say, let's do reds and yellows. And I can choose maybe this one and I'll flip it. And I'll click done. I don't really want to see it transparent anymore, so I'll undo that. So basically now I can see these bright colored polygons need to be burned first. These darker ones will be burned later on. I can also choose just to use discrete time periods. So if I know I'm burning 4 different days, now my different days are colored based on that date of prescription. All right. Andrew, I think it's back to you now.
Awesome. That's such a really cool, good example to show these projects over time. And you can make a certain map dedicated to just showing that project. So you can open it up, print it out, and keep track of that over time. The next thing I'm going to show you guys is how to do some more with the symbology and how to do some labeling too, because I think it'll be very helpful. So when we were talking about the different colors and stuff and how we can like re-symbolize things, we have the options to do more than just color. So if I have this park signage layer, there is a symbology I've assigned to it. I did the field is the condition of these signs. So the good signs around Natchez Trace, the whole WMA and State Forest area here are in green, fair, poor. Missing are in red and destroyed. So we had TWA and the State Forest people all out there collecting signage. So a great way to collaborate beyond your boundaries with this stuff. If I also want to know more about these signs, like what is the material for the sign that I'm trying to replace, we have that data. Anything that has a field, like a drop down when you're creating it, could be symbolized. And that's why it's really nice to do things with preset fields where there's like a drop down versus just typing in text, because it's really easy to symbolize based on that field. If I go to park signage, there's something cool that I can do, which is duplicating the layer. This creates another view of this layer. We're not copying data like making 2 points plus 2 points equals 4 total points there. It's just another view of the same set of data. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call this one, I'm going to do a rename real quick and call park signage condition, because that's how I symbolized it. I'm going to duplicate this layer, and this version I'm going to call park signage material. When you copied it over, or when you made that duplicate, it also carried over the symbology, which is nice. So that might be helpful. But I'm going to go to the material one. And this time when I go to the style, the symbology, I'm going to change it from working on the condition to a different field. And in this case, material. When I hit add, it allows me to pick a style. And right now it's showing these tiny little color dots. You can see it sort of starting to populate the legend. Color on top of color can kind of get confusing, especially with like color blindness and stuff too, or different vision. So sometimes we want to use some symbols. So in this case, I'm going to switch wooden signs to be not just a basic point, but I'm going to go with a shape. I want all my wooden signs to be a diamond. I'm going to make this a lot bigger to be 15 points. So now you can see some red diamonds. I'm going to change it to off black here. That's pretty cool. So now I can see which of my signs are made out of wood. So if I wanted to do a full wooden sign replacement, now I know where those are. I'm going to go back in here and I want to change all the metal ones to be a different shape. Let's do triangles. And we could do color, but I'm going to make them black again, make them a little bit smaller. And now I've got a pretty cool inventory of these. And if I wasn't worried about other or plastic, what I can do is I can check both of these and I could group them or just straight remove them from being in my legend. And now there's like 430 signs in the other category. I'm just going to turn those off. All right, so now as I zoom in, I can pretty quickly or easily see which of these signs are wooden versus metal. So that might be helpful for a quick print map and to keep that over time. So that is changing the symbology and duplicating layers. All right, let's head on over to Tim's Ford to talk about utilities and how to do some labeling on them. Utilities can get pretty busy. So having some labels that show up on your custom map every time you open it up will be really helpful. Down near the bottom or halfway down is our statewide utilities layer. It's located right here. If I expand it, there's about 20 different utility types we've created so far. They're mostly points and lines. So we've got potable water, irrigation, septic, electrical. No one currently is saying you have to collect this stuff, but if it's useful, if you've got a maintenance worker who knows everything about your park that's about time to retire, go out with the field map with them and map all the things that they know before they leave. It might end up being helpful for you. I could turn these on one at a time, or I could turn the entire set on, in which case that's what I'm going to do here. Wow, really cool. We can see their water network that they've mapped so far. But this isn't really telling me anything at a first glance, except that blue is water. So I'm going to go to the water lines. I'm going to select it so you can see that it's blue over here. And I'm going to go down to not the symbology, but the labels. I add a label class. I know a lot of these are new terms, but just by practicing, you'll start to understand what the different buttons and the terms mean. Automatically, it did it by object ID, which is just kind of a random number, but let's change it to something that's more helpful. Let's do material maybe. Awesome. You'll see now that it is showing PVC as the type of material for these. I could change it to something like the line type or maybe the diameter. That could be helpful. So these are all 4-inch diameter pipes. This one is 6-inch and that's 2-inch. And right now it might be a little bit hard to see. So what I want to do is change the label style. In doing so, I can make it just plain red, or I could have some fun with it. I could give it a bigger halo uh, if I want it to really pop out. I can change where it's centered, so I can have it above, I could have it below, I could have it repeating um, to tell it how many times to repeat, and I can even change things like which font to use and what size. I'm going to go to the water points too and show you a different symbology for that. So I'm on water points. I go to the side where the labels are, and I'm going to add a new label class and change it from being object ID to maybe something like notes. Awesome. Well, they did a really good job documenting some notes about these. I'm going to change the style to make it a little bit easier to read. Maybe I'll put it in dark green for now. Maybe that's not the easiest, but we'll go with it. And I'll change the positioning about where it is. I want all of them to be center left so that they're associated with this. If I zoom into the water points now, I can see that this shutoff kills the main entire park except for the main office sprinkler system. This fire hydrant gets inspected yearly by Broadview Fire Department. Shutoff is in front of it. So it's really cool that you can keep these notes with it. So every time that your maintenance people wanted to open up this web map on the computer, they could see this. This could be something that's bookmarked, and they just open it up, log into their account, and we can also make edits on this over time. I'm going to show you one more labeling thing, and let's talk about our adjacent parcels. Because this is a big layer, I'm going to turn it off so that it doesn't have trouble loading. And we're going to go over to another park. Let's go to Henry Horton is nearby. So let's zoom in here. They recently acquired a new parcel down here. And what if their goal was to someday own every single parcel along the river? That might be far-fetched, but you never know. We might get a lot of money someday. There is a layer that we recently added, and we're going to try to update like twice a year called adjacent parcels. Come on down towards some of the land things. And what that is we just run a buffer about all the parcels that intersect your park. If I turn this on, we see that in this case, we get to see all the neighbors and places that touch our park. So if you're having boundary issues or you just want to get to know your neighbor better, this could be great. We're talking to the natural areas folks, and sometimes if we know that there's rare species on the park and we know our neighbors really well, we can work with them to help document and preserve rare species on their parcels too. But how are you going to know your neighbors just by looking at this? Well, luckily, the tax parcels are coming from the comptroller's office and have some really useful information. I'm going to go to my labels and turn these on, and I'm going to add a label class. GIS link doesn't mean anything to us. Maybe it does at the comptroller's office, but you know what does? The owner. So right here, I've got the owners of these parcels, all labeled. Maybe you're more interested in knowing what the deeded acreage is or the calculated acreage, in which case we can see how many acres there are. So if you're doing a Slack meeting and you quickly want to just, instead of going on to the tax assessor's parcel mapper, you can maybe use this to just get a general estimate. I'm going to change it back to landowner because I thought that was helpful. And they're really, there's a lot of landowners here, so it's kind of hard to see. If I zoom out, it gets really busy and starts to be slow to load, and I won't be able to see everybody. Remember how we talked about visibility scales earlier about when things show up? The same can be done with labels. So if you go to the bottom of the label setting, you can change the visibility scale to only show up when you get really close. So as that arrow approaches my visibility scale and I get close enough, they will pop on so that I can see. You save that setting and it will be there every time that you open your map. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Leah now.
Okay, so I'm over at Alvin C. York, and I'm going to demo how to edit, I'm sorry, create features using map viewers. So just like field maps or the OneSmart Park web version, you can create and edit data in this map viewer itself, and it'll be very similar to those other platforms. So first I'm going to um, turn on a layer called this terrain dark multi-directional hillshade. It's near the bottom. It's a pretty sweet hillshade layer that shows really good detail actually if you zoom in and let it load. There we go. So just viewing Alvin C. York from afar, not knowing anything about this property really, I'm seeing some terrain features that interest me. And so I want to create points while I'm in the office so that I can navigate to them next time I go out into the field. So if I go over to my white toolbar and I click edit, I'm going to type in sinkhole because that's what I think this little point is in the terrain, but I'm not too sure yet until I go out into the field. You'll see under landscape features, it's grayed out and it won't let me click on it. That's because that layer is currently turned off in my layers list. So I'm going to find landscape feature, turn it on, and now it's not grayed out. So I'll click on that. It's going to give me a little crosshair and I'm going to drop that right on that point that I'm interested in. I'm going to say we're at Alvin C. York. This form should look really similar to what you're used to out in the field. I can give it a name. Public view on this will say no. Site description, so this is where I could say this is a potential sinkhole. Go out into the field and check this out. And then I can click create if I happen to find any files on it, or while I'm in the field, I can edit this using the Field Maps application and add photos and descriptions if I want to. So I'll click create. And again, all of these layers that are in this map are statewide layers that are syncing up to the cloud and feeding those other OneSmart Park platforms. So all the same data, so everyone can view it at the same time and real-time updates too. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom out and we're gonna close out of this edit, and we're gonna show you how to add in some layers from the Living Atlas. So I'm going to zoom out and we're going to turn that terrain layer off again. And we're just going to look at it from a statewide view. So on the layers list at the very bottom, there's an add button. And it's going to first pull up my content, but you want to go to Living Atlas. Living Atlas is like a worldwide collection of authoritative data sets that you can trust. There's a ton on here, so feel free to kind of search around and have some fun with it. Something that does help is using this little filter that says only show content within the map area. That just helps you not see other data from other countries, but know that the data is available for Tennessee. So just some cool examples I'll show really quickly is like current wildfires. This first layer, so if I zoom out, load for me. Let me change it to a more simple base map so we can see. There we go. And then I'm also going to turn off these state park points. Okay, awesome. Okay, going back to add living atlas, we're going to type in fire. And we're going to do this USA current wildfires. Hopefully it loads, but I don't think it's going to. Okay, bad example. Let's try a different one. I'm going to type in stream gauge. There we go. And I'm going to add that in. Okay, sweet. This one's working. So let's say I want to zoom in to the Harpeth. These are those live stream gauge data. So if I click on one of them, it's actually going to give me the graph of that gauge. I can even click on the station and it will take me to the NOAA website about this particular station. So that's kind of cool. Another example is, let's type in Virgo. Like this erodibility factor is pretty sweet. So if I add in this layer, it's going to be a raster. And if I click on one of these pixels, it's going to give me an erodibility factor. Anything that's closer to 0.64, the top of the scale, is going to be more susceptible to erosion. So that could be good to know when trail planning and other things. You also have just like your normal soil hydrologic groups if you're interested in that kind of thing. And then the last one I'm going to show you is just the simple HUC 12. So you have access to all of these different HUCs. Those are your hydrologic units. We're going to add in the 12s. And we're going to zoom on into red clay. Okay, so maybe I'm having a project done, some research at red clay where I want to know my watershed. If I click on this watershed, it'll highlight and it's going to tell me my HUC ID. I'm going to copy that for later, but first I want to make this a little darker. So I'm going to go to my base map and we're going to use this dark gray canvas. That's better. Okay, so say I want to print out a map of my watershed of red clay. So I don't want to see these other watersheds around it, so I'm going to filter them out by using the filter button. First, I need to make sure that layer is selected in my layers list, and then I go over to filter, add a filter, where my HUC 12, and this is where I'm pasting in that number, and save. So now I'm only seeing the HUC 12 that I'm interested in. And I want to print this off as a map. So I'm just going to select out of here and we're going to go to our black toolbar. At the bottom it says print. We're really slow today for some reason. Give it a second.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that on the Living Atlas, which is where all those official data sets are, you don't have to use all of it at all times. If you just want to bring in, you need a county boundary or something like that, or metro areas, there's a lot of census data related things that are in the Living Atlas that you could bring in. And then you filter it down so that you're only showing the thing that's of interest to you. So if you wanted to see school districts, so you know which ones are closest to your park, or some census data. There's a whole bunch of different things out there, and I'll put it in the chat too. There's a way to explore it, so you don't just have to search. Um, it is called like the Living Atlas Catalog or the Explorer. And when you go to there, they have all different categories. So whether it's environmental or base maps, imagery, infrastructure, all of those are available. And Lee, if you want to open that up real quick, you can show them just what that looks like.
Okay, thanks. It finally loaded. Woo!
Find some time. Yes.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, these are all the different categories. You'll see those USA current wildfires. And you'll see some of them are marked as authoritative. You can find out a little bit more about who's the person publishing this. Do they have some street cred? Usually, in most cases, they do. Yeah, look at those. All those are the ones that are coming in. Even Tennessee has some small fires. What's really cool is that some of these are just observed by satellite, and Leah might have mentioned that. So the different scale of them, and then the agencies that are responding provide supplementary information about that. You could filter it down by time. You could see wildfires that have occurred over time here too. But back in the Living Atlas, a whole bunch of different categories. If you go up to the top, under people, you can find out more about this. So if you're into GIS, there's way more to the science that you can bring in than just stuff that is state park related. Your at-risk communities, income spending, all of those could be symbolized. So you could find out what are the spending patterns or the income of the communities around you at different levels, like census block or block group or tract. So just a really cool plug for the different data that's available to you through GIS. All right, back to print.
Thanks. Okay, so as you can see, it's going to default to a landscape print, and it's going to show you in this blue box what it's actually going to print. For this, I want to actually use portrait, so that looks much better. And then if I go down to advanced options, I'm going to actually want to include a legend and a north arrow. Just know that when you include a legend, the name of the layer is going to be the name that is in your layers list. So if it's not the name that you want in your legend, just rename that layer and then export that print. So I'm just going to click export, and in a little bit we're going to have a PDF to show you, and I can show you that example of renaming your layers in your layers list so that they come out better. If you're interested in only just printing out a quick map, not really a layout with legends and things, you can use this map only tab right here. But for the most part, you'll use layout if you want those things included. Here's that quick map that I just made. As you can see, it looks just like the map online. And then down here is where you have your legend items. And again, if I wanted to like remove this, I would just rename my layer item to not include that. Okay, back to you, Andrew.
Awesome. Yeah, that can be a lot of fun. Well, a couple other things I want to show you guys is other data sources that you can bring in. So at the top, you can bring in anything that we have in our ArcGIS Online system that might you might have access to. So if I go to my organization, that's where you found the Living Atlas stuff. But you can filter and find things. Maybe there's an environmental side of the house, something that you want to bring in, water quality monitoring, things like that. Maybe you've created a survey 123. When you build a survey 123 and publish it, that layer will show up in your content as something that you could bring in so you could see and visualize the results here. If I search in my organization for survey 123, let's see if anything shows up. There was a vending machine survey from back in the day. Eric's been doing some survey 123 at Montgomery Bell. You can bring in all those different things into the GIS system. You can also bring things in by adding from a URL. So if you talk to somebody outside, maybe it's at a university or something like that, and they say, I published this and I have a service, you can bring in that service of GIS data into here. It's not like a hard copy that you download to the computer. It's basically a live feed of the data. So if they update it, it will be updated on your map. So that's the great thing about using services. Our geospatial data portal for the state is located here. I'll put a link in the chat. And what that is, it's all the official data coming out of each of our agencies. If you come to the bottom, you'll see that TDOT has the most, but there's also stuff coming from TWRA, STS, and even we have some from TDEC too, like Scenic Rivers. On any of these, you can scroll down to something that you're interested in, such as, let's do the boating access. If I open up boating access, there's a couple ones such as fishing. So if I want to figure out where are all the fishing locations being advertised by TWRA, and I want to bring those into my map so I can talk about how that impacts my park. You open up the layer, say, I want to use this down at the bottom, go to the data source. I know a lot of buttons here, and you're going to copy this link. Now, remember when I said that we can add from a URL? You paste it in here, it's going to fill in some information. And when I add it to the map, now I have all the fishing locations here. And maybe I want to symbolize those by, I think they have like trout stocking locations as a layer two, winter versus spring, summer. It's really cool data that you can be bringing in. Another layer I saw that was on there too was we had the House districts of Tennessee. So it's a legislative session. You might be getting some questions. You probably do know the people around your community, but maybe you have new rangers or you're trying to network and learn more about that. I can go to ArcGIS Online, find that URL. Sometimes it's located down here and you can copy, paste, and I'll show you the reason I'm bringing that in is some parks aren't in just one house district. So if I come over to Norris Dam, depending on what side of the park you're going to be doing your work on, you might be wanting to talk to a different house representative. By clicking somewhere within it, we can see who that is and even the population within that house district. So I think that's really cool. There's a handful of other parks that are split up. Cumberland Trail for Bill, every house district of Tennessee is probably involved. But it's really cool, especially in the other cities where it can be complicated. Even down here in South Cumberland, it's split up. So it's good for you guys to know. Other data you can bring in is some agencies like the National Park Service will have like a geospatial discovery portal, and you could bring in recreation data. So in this case, I was looking for their 85,000 trail records. I did the same thing, view data source. I can copy the URL, bring it in here, and by pasting it in here, now I have the U.S. Forest Service trails. So no longer do you have to keep a record of that, an old file on your computer and wonder, do I have the most recent trail? So it's really cool that that will show up like that. In this case, do you see how it's grayed out? That is about those visibility scales again. If I go to the settings on this, I could pull it back so that I see those from further away. I know not a lot of our parks touch national forests and stuff, but there are a bunch of other like federal level data sets, TVA, Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Wildlife Service that have geospatial data portals that you can bring in. And did we cover sketches and all that too with the printing, Leah?
No, we didn't.
All right. So let's say I got a project and we're going to go back to Norris Dam and I'm saying we're doing a massive development project. And I want to loop in two different representatives here. And yes, I have the info on the pop-up here, but I wish I could just label it on the map and keep it there forever. One thing that you could do is go over to the sidebar. So we have edit here, but we also have this thing called add sketch. A sketch is not spatial, but it is kind of locked to wherever you place it. So in this case, I'm going to choose a bit of text and I'm going to say that it is Representative Dennis Powers. The symbol for it is maybe I want to make it dark green, change the font to this nice bold color thing, do the transparency, rotate it a little bit, give it a halo. I actually don't want to rotate it, but I can place it anywhere. So if I zoom in and I place it here, the size of it also kind of gets locked. So as I zoom in and out, it stays there. I'm going to click off here so that I can once again just select the representative here, Representative Ed Butler. I'm going to add another sketch. And I'm going to do the name is the content of what the text I'm putting there is there. And that's really cool is it already remembers the most recent symbology that you use, whether it was the upside down one or just the color and the font. And we're saying they're going head to head over an issue here. So now every time I work on this, I can save and everything gets saved to the map with it. So if I add other sketches such as an area of interest, I'm going to use a preset one that I did and draw it out. We're talking about this whole area around here. Maybe I'll label this the Norris Dam Improvement Project, Norris Dam Removal. That would certainly impact the park and the representatives there. I could close this map, and when I reopen it, it's going to save all those notes right there. So it can be really good for a project that you've been working on and you just want to add notes to it over time. All of those sketches can also print back out. So uh, when I open the map, it remembers where I was at the time, the most recent things that I added. I don't think I had finished saving when I added that area of interest, but it still does have the text that I had placed down there. If I need to move that or change that at any point, I'm going to open the sketch tool again, click on the arrow, which is my selector, and that allows me to select the thing. Maybe I want to make the font different, or change some settings on it, the size of it. And when I'm done, I would hit save and then I can go to print and print off a map that shows this information. So if you're doing, imagine you're doing like a cleanup of the park and you said, this is my area of interest that we're going to clean up today. This is the person that I want assigned to it. Some of that stuff is not geospatial. Maybe you collected trail damages and you are showing that point layer, but you want to just say, this is the area we're working on today. You've got an AmeriCorps crew coming out. You could quickly print out a map for them to use in the field, which would be great. All right, that about wraps it up, but I'm going to say one more thing about web maps versus field maps. What we've created here today is a web map. It's a custom web map. When you open it up on your phone, it's called a field map through ArcGIS Field Maps. The One Smart Park field map will always work for you and you can take it offline. Your custom web map that you've made, you can kind of take it offline. If you were to open up field maps right now and search for the things that you can view, you would actually probably see that custom web map. But sometimes they're not enabled for offline collection in the field, and especially not offline collection. So if you do want to make an offline field map where you can collect things, definitely reach out to us. When you're doing things like duplicating layers and adding extra symbology, the field map doesn't always like that because it doesn't want to collect on two different layers at the same time. So reach out to us and we can help you troubleshoot through all of that. So with that, thank you guys for joining us. It's always fun to teach some GIS, and just reach out if you've got questions about licensing, setting up your projects, and we'd be happy to come out to work with you in the field anytime or schedule a Teams call and we can do all the button clicking together. All right, thank you very much and hope you guys have a good afternoon.